Good afternoon. Welcome to the May 1st meeting of the Yakima School Board. We're pleased today to be at Robertson Elementary School. And I believe we have some students that are going to lead the Pledge of Allegiance for us. I need to make a couple announcements first, then we'll do the Pledge of Allegiance. Okay, for our people in our community that are not here, we offer live streaming options for this meeting. You can find the link on our webpage under Find It Fast. For public comment, there are two options for public comment. The first option is for commenting on agenda items only, and the second option toward the end of the meeting is for any other topic. There are two documents to sign if you would like to speak today. There's a sign-in form and a guidelines form. If you are interested in past meetings, you can find a link on our webpage to the Yakima School District YouTube channel to view past meetings that were recorded and posted there. Laura, would you call the roll, please?
Director Beckett.
Here.
Director Navarro Jr. Director Rice.
Here.
Vice President Villanueva.
Here.
President Walker.
Present.
All are accounted for.
And I believe today we're going to have the Pledge of Allegiance presented by our Robertson leadership teams, many of whom we met on the way in. So thank you for being here and giving your extra time. And Ms. Piss, did you want to introduce the team that's here today? Yeah, we met.
Oh, I'll leave that there. Good afternoon. I'm Mrs. Davis. Thank you for coming to Robertson. We're glad to have you here. We have some leadership crew members with us. Logan Boyd is going to step up here first. Okay. We have Sam, we have Julian, we have Lila, and we have Hamlet. They were all going to be helping us out with the Pledge of Allegiance, and Sam's going to read the character word of the month afterwards. In the back, we also have Max Jackson, who's there, and we had Abel Howergy, who was helping us out as well. So those are some of the members of our leadership crew. So I'm going to step back and I'm going to let them take over. If you walked in, you already got to experience their amazing leadership. They were checking your IDs at the door. I did not put them up to that. Their amazing leadership. They just come up with a lot of ideas on their own. They were super excited to be here today. So I'm going to let Logan sort of start us out.
Ready, begin. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
The character word of the month is reverence. Reverence means honor or respect felt or shown.
Thank you so much for joining us today and giving your time and greeting us again. And you're welcome to stay for the meeting, but I suspect homework or dinner or something. Okay, moving on. We have the Yakima land acknowledgement.
Today, the schools of the Yakima School District rest on the ancestral lands of the 14 confederated tribes and bands of the Yakima Nation.
The people of the Yakima Nation inhabited more than 12 million acres.
Across Adams, Benton, Chelan, Douglas, Franklin, Grant, Kittitas, Cliticat, and Yakima counties.
Today we honor the Native people who are tied to the land through history, legends, and cultures.
We acknowledge their descendants who live in the world today.
We thank the caretakers of this land who have lived here and continue to live here since time immemorial.
An acknowledgement is a simple, powerful way to show respect.
And a step toward correcting the stories and practices that erase Indigenous peoples' history and culture.
It also honors the truth.
As a school district, we'll continue to build upon our relations with the Yakima Nation.
Thank you, students. Today we have one special recognition and 2 proclamations, and Dr. Darling has a special recognition. Hey,
Thank you, President Walker. May is Better Hearing and Speech Month. In 1927, the Federation of Organizations for the Hard of Hearing created National Hearing Week to raise awareness and promote understanding of hearing health and communication disorders. In 1958, the event expanded to a month-long celebration known as Better Hearing Month. Today, the American Speech Language Hearing Association celebrates the month of May as Better Hearing and Speech Month. Yakima School District's audiologists, speech and language pathologists, and teachers of deaf/hard of hearing serve over 1,300 students preschool age through age 21. In honor of Better Hearing and Speech Month, the Yakima School District Board of Directors would like to acknowledge the substantial role the audiologists, speech and language pathologists, and teachers have played locally, regionally, and nationally in raising awareness and promoting understanding of hearing health and communication disorders. Thank you.
thank you. And next up, we have 2 proclamations, one for Arts Education Month and one for Teacher Appreciation Week. Director Beckett, I believe, the first one.
Whereas the month of May has been recognized as Arts Education Month by many communities and school districts across the state of Washington, and whereas the arts embody much of the accumulated wisdom, intellect, and imagination of humankind, and whereas learning in the arts enhances and enriches the lives of all students, and whereas arts education teaches creative problem solving and cultural knowledge and offers multiple pathways to understanding for different types of learners, and whereas arts education increases connections and engagement between teachers, students, and the connected community that surrounds them, now therefore be it resolved that the Yakima School District Board of Directors designates the month of May 2023 as Arts Education Month, and be it further resolved that the Yakima School District Board of Directors calls on the community to celebrate and promote the arts in our schools and to take action to provide equitable access to arts learning for all students in our learning community.
Thank you, Director Beckett. Next up, we have Teacher Appreciation Week. Director Rice will read that for us.
Whereas teachers serve in partnership with parents to ensure the appropriate education for all children, and whereas teachers strive to instruct students to read with comprehension, write with skill, and communicate effectively and responsibly in a variety of ways and settings, and whereas teachers teach our community's children to know and apply mathematical and science concepts, and whereas teachers inspire students to think strategically and to integrate experience and knowledge to form reasoned judgments, and whereas teachers help students to understand the importance of work and their contribution to society, and whereas we recognize and support our teachers in their mission to educate the children of our community. Now therefore be it resolved that the Yakima School District Board of Directors designates the week of May 8th to 12th, 2023 as Teacher Appreciation Week. And be it further resolved that the Yakima School District Board of Directors calls on the community to join with it in personally thanking and recognizing teachers for their dedication and devotion to their work. Dated this first day of May 2023, Yakima School District Board of Directors.
Thank you, Director Rice. And now we're so pleased to be at Robertson today, our report from Robertson Elementary.
Okay. Well, they're not quite ready with technology, but I can certainly get us started. So welcome to Robertson. I'm Carrie Davis, proud principal at Robertson Elementary. This is my first year in the role of principal, but it's actually my 10th year at Robertson. I just am so dedicated to Robertson. I just keep coming back, and I love it. And I'm really excited and really grateful for the opportunity to share some of the great work that we have going on at Robertson. So I'm going to go ahead. Oh, we're all ready to go. The mission here at Robertson is that we work together cooperatively as a staff with parents and students to help all students achieve their maximum potential in a safe, warm, and caring environment. So we've sort of taken an additional safety step this year. If you look at the screen, we have two pictures. It's a before and after. This year, we actually added fencing all the way around Robertson. Our campus, if you've been here, is a little unique. It's an outdoor campus, lots of access points. So this year, we were able to utilize some additional ESSER funds to secure all of the campus with fencing. We're really excited about this. So when you walk in, it looks a little bit different. We have a camera and a buzzer at the front gate that's controlled by our office staff, so they can check and see everyone who's coming in. Another camera and buzzer at our front office. Overwhelmingly, every family that I've talked to is excited about the fencing. They're really grateful. They feel like it's an additional layer of security for their children. Not a single complaint about having to go through the buzzer system. Even on the days we weren't quite ready to go and we were having to make some adjustments to our camera system, parents have been grateful about that. Students also that we've talked with are just very excited about having the fencing as well. They feel safer. They also like that when they're on the playground playing on the blacktop, they don't lose their basketballs in the parking lot anymore. So we've just been really, really pleased that we've been able to add this security to Robertson this year. As you came in, you met our leadership crew. We have some phenomenal leaders here at Robertson. Within our students who you just met, and also among our staff. And we have an amazing instructional leadership team. We have representation from every grade level. We have representation from special education and specialists. And one thing that holds it all together is that they have an amazing dedication and commitment to all students. It isn't just my students and your students. It's the understanding that every student at Robertson is our student, and we are collectively committed to making sure they all achieve success. Every summer, our instructional leadership team gets together and they have a summer retreat. We take a look at data, we take a look at needs for our building, and we also make sure that we're working to align our work to the YSD strategic plan. Every summer, we create our school improvement plan and we update our goals. And we always try to make sure we have it aligned. And currently, our current plan most closely aligns with goals 1, 2, and 3. When we sit down to look at all of that data, we look at demographics, state data, district screeners, behavioral data, some of our CEE data, and then other building measures. And when we're sorting through that, we take a look at the demographics, looking for any disparities or gaps in the data. Just a few things to call out with our demographics that are kind of important when we look on the next couple slides at our data. Our Hispanic population is about 75%. Our percentage of free and reduced meals is about 80%. Our special education population makes up about 21% of students, and transitional bilingual is at 26%. So in the summer of 2021, we actually sat down with our leadership team, and instead of doing a yearly goal, which we had been doing, we actually set out to do 3-year goals. One of the things that we have data-wise from the state is looking at student growth percentiles, which looks at the growth of a group over time compared to the growth of other students across the state. By looking at that, we sort of take that eye off of did we achieve, and we look at that growth piece. So we're looking at a system level and seeing, hey, is what we're doing at the school level working over time? So we made that shift, and so these are our 3-year goals. So when we started it, we had 39 student growth percentile for literacy, and our goal by 2024 is to get to 57. When we looked at our demographics, we noticed we had a gap for our students with disability in literacy. So we created an additional goal of getting students from 35 growth percentile to 53 by 2024. In math, our school goal was to get from 48 student growth percentile to 57. And we saw a gap for our English language learners, and we want to increase their growth from 47 student growth percentile to 57 by 2024. When we looked at attendance, we got hit pretty hard with COVID, as many did. Our attendance rate was at 86%, so you'll notice this goal is a little longer than the 3-year mark. Just looking at what was reasonable, about 2% each year until we got to that 95% goal, which is kind of our big overall goal. We're seeing some really good growth in that area, which is exciting. And so we're kind of excited to see how much more growth we can make in the coming years. We knew looking at our SBA when we took it last spring, we might see some decline in areas for our students across the board. This is one just snapshot from 5th grade. We actually saw that in our ELA and science, we were close to that 50% mark, which is pretty on par with proficiency across the state. So we were pleased to see that we hadn't lost as much ground there. We know that we still have those pockets where we have some concerns and some areas of growth, as does everyone else coming out of COVID. The attendance this year, we have a new database we're using to track our attendance more closely than we ever have before. The advantage to that is we're really on top of checking in with individual students and making sure we're getting them here. So this graph shows our attendance averages by grade. It goes from 85 to 100%. So you can see when we're looking at this data, we can sort of look, okay, we've got some lower ones in 2nd grade. So what's going on there? We can start analyzing what's the root cause, what are some concerns. We have a really phenomenal attendance team that meets every single week. We're looking at this data, we're looking at individual data, talking to families, trying to determine what are barriers keeping kids from school. And when you put all of our attendance together, our actually school average currently is 90%. So we're doing really well moving toward that 95% goal. This is a look at our exclusionary discipline. Just to note, this is cumulative, so it adds every month. And it's from the past 3 years. So in the 2020-21 school year, we didn't have any exclusionary discipline. Last year is in blue and the current year is in orange. So our first exclusionary discipline, we had 2 in November, pardon me. And then December jumps to 3, meaning we added 1 more. And then January, we added 2 more, we had 5. So right now we've had 6 total exclusionary discipline for the year, which is less than we've had at this time last year, which was 9. So one of our goals is trying to make sure that we have the support systems behaviorally for students. We have our systems set up so that all students know expectations. We give support to students and to staff. Our goal being that students need to be here and learning, and so we try to provide as many supports as possible. In addition to having our school improvement plan goals, every grade level team also sets their goals that align to the school goals. Within that, we have action items. One of our big focus action items is all grade level teams are really focused on their backward planning, creating and using learning intentions and success criteria, looking at analyzing student data so that they know how to intervene in small groups and interventions. And if you take a look at the 2 pictures on there, we don't just want that data to live with teachers. We work really hard to help students visualize and see their growth and progress as well. Again, going back to that school improvement plan goal is that growth. We're not just focused on achievement, but we want to really see the growth. We want to highlight that and show it with students as well. So that's an example of a kindergarten classroom. They've got rockets because we are the Robertson Rockets, of course. And so students are able to use their progress monitoring in each time they are moving up so that they can visually see their rocket moving throughout the year and sort of celebrating their growth in literacy. The other example is a picture of a learning intention and success criteria. The teachers are using them when they design their instruction, but it's also used in instruction with students. The idea being that clarity of learning for students, that if they know what they're learning and the steps it takes to get there, then they know what they're working on, they know how to get there, and it puts that ownership back on students so that they can really own their learning. Owning learning is a big theme for us at Robertson with all of our students. Every student at every grade has a leadership notebook. Grade level teams get together and they determine, based on our school improvement goals and things students are working on, what are the goals that we're having students track. These are some examples from a 3rd grade leadership notebook. They're tracking their multiplication and division. So looking at that fact fluency. There's a fluency tracking for reading. So when our students do progress monitoring, they sit with an adult, they read and they get immediate score results and immediate feedback. They're also setting goals. So if they know how much they've read, they get feedback from adult, they can set that next goal that they're working toward. They track it in their notebooks so that they're able to see their growth. And we also share these at conferences and kids take them home at the end of the year. So families are also being able to see what their child is learning, and kids can articulate, hey, this is what I've learned and this is how much I've grown. And the last one is a monthly reading goal tracking. So as a school, we're working really hard to, we have 2 big school goals, one for reading and one for attendance. I'll show on the next slide. But we're trying to build that culture of being readers. And so we've had this ongoing school goal every month, every kid creates their goal for reading. It might be number of books read, it might be chapters, it might be minutes. It's really flexible based on the age and the teacher and also the student. So those really, really high achieving readers can set a challenge for themselves, but also giving some attainable goals for some of our struggling readers to also feel and experience that success. So they also have we have a school-wide goals and attendance. These are also really tailored to every different situation in a classroom. So for some students, it might be that they have less than one a month, but we also want to celebrate growth for our students as well. So for some kids that are having some chronic attendance issues at elementary, they're not always able to get themselves up and get out the door themselves. They need that adult support. So one of the things that our attendance team does, led by our assistant principal, Ryan Treat, is they look at every student and they're figuring out what's going on. Why are they late? How can we help support them? They have conversations with families. They create plans. So they're trying their very best. And one of the things that we do with goals is it can be a goal for being here, but it's also a growth goal as well. So if we have students with chronic attendance, they can have a goal that's really tailored to them. And then at the end of the month, every student who meets their reading goal and attendance goal gets an extra recess. It's super fun to just see all of the kids out there celebrating and just recognizing how hard they're working and all of the great things that they're doing. One of the other key things at Robertson and YSD is working on PLCs this year. So our professional learning teams are our grade level teams. Prior to the PLC initiative that Yakima is taking on, we really had high functioning teams. We've done a lot of work around what does a high functioning team look like. Every team already had established norms that we reviewed throughout the year, created agendas, kept notes, and really just had that focus on what is it about student learning that we're working on and working towards. So everyone has been really excited about what the PLC process has brought to our teams that just enhanced it. Every team plans really, really intentionally. We take apart the standards. We're creating learning intention and success criteria to create that clarity for learning. And another great thing that we've done a lot of is vertical teaming. And I will say that that has been one positive thing to come out of COVID for Robertson. In the middle of the pandemic, we're all online and no one knows what they're doing. And so our teachers were not shy about seeking help from their teammates, but also from across the building. I had fifth grade teachers going to kindergarten teachers like, what are you doing and how are you doing this? And what they realized was that together collectively, they had this very powerful ability to help each other and help all kids. Coming back, they all really requested, let's do as much vertical collaboration as we can because we know we learn from each other and we don't just learn in isolation. So the examples on the screen are from one of our vertical collaborations. We did this during collaboration time. We were working on learning intention and success criteria. So every team got together, kind of created their visual. We did a gallery walk to just see what are other teams doing, what can we learn, what can we take away, or what is it I saw from another team that's like, oh my gosh, that is the thing that we need to know. So our teachers really love engaging in this process. Today we actually did some more vertical collaboration on just our incoming classrooms of kids and what supports students need kind of going into next year. So that's one really big thing at Robertson that we have continued. Another big thing at Robertson is, again, that idea that every kid is our kid, that collectively we are responsible for every student in this building. And supporting all students has been a huge initiative for us. As you came in, you saw our leadership students, but you also got to see members of our building student education team or BSET team. If you're in the back, can you wave a hand? They hung out. So this year, we've had a wonderful BSET team. And the really cool thing about them is nearly all of them are brand new to Robertson. We have a brand new counselor, a brand new instructional facilitator, a brand new behavior specialist, a reading interventionist, and an academic specialist. And they joined our school psych, who has a brand new psych intern, and a couple special education teachers. And this group of teachers is really committed to Robertson kids. So they meet every week. They are looking at different students that have been brought to the attention of the team through a process that we've really worked hard on to streamline. We have information about students. We've talked to teachers about interventions they're trying, things that are working, things that are not, and we have follow-up. They're the ones who make sure that no kid falls through the cracks. They are the behind-the-scenes work that you don't always see, But when you work with this amazing group, you see that every kid is seen, every kid is noticed, and every teacher is heard about the needs that they have. So that's been a really amazing thing this year, and we are getting great progress with some of our students that aren't necessarily served through our tier 1 processes. So we have positive behavior intervention supports, as well as all of our supports that we give all of our core instruction. So that's considered our tier 1, and our BSET group has really helped our kids that aren't quite making it there. So they become our tier 2 students. So they're taking a look at them, they see what they need. Some of our school-wide core things that we're working on is recognizing and acknowledging students, positive recognition for behavior, also for their academics, using the zones of regulation. So there's a little graphic on the bottom. If you're not familiar with it, this is a social emotional learning curriculum that we're using school-wide. There's 4 zones: blue, green, yellow, and red. And these are just ways for students to articulate what they're feeling and what emotional state they're kind of in at the moment. Blue means you might be a little sad or a little tired. Red means you might be upset or angry. Yellow could be excited, it could be worried or nervous. And green is that ready to go, ready to learn. No zone is a bad zone, and we teach kids that. But we also teach them about strategies if they're stuck in a zone and they want to get to green, which is that ready to learn place. I carry it on my lanyard and I love it because often I interact with students who maybe aren't having the best of days. And it's amazing to have that common language, but also for kids to just be able to, they can't even say the words, they can point to what zone they're in. It just helps me to know what my next steps are to help get that kid regulated and sort of back to a place where they're in a place where they're ready to learn. We're using another social emotional curriculum, second step. We're also using small group interventions. Again, our BSET team has done a ton of work with this. We have some new data for social emotional learning this year that we've been able to use to create some small groups and work on some skills that we haven't in prior years been able to attend to. And we're seeing just really great results with that, and just seeing that our social emotional needs for students are met along with their academic needs. One example, our behavior specialist does a lot of this work. So we have some students who maybe in their classroom are struggling and not quite met with all of our tier 1 supports. And so these students, sometimes they just need to have some additional time to work on some specific skills. So this is an example of a behavior chart for students who sometimes struggle with behavior. There's 2 or 3 goals. It's meant to be a short-term intervention. So they work on it for a little while. They have usually a morning check-in and an afternoon check-in, and they're working towards specific goals. And once we've retaught that behavior, they're able to hopefully kind of meet that goal and kind of go back to being supported by tier 1. So this year we've really focused on that, and our behavior specialist has done an amazing job with these. And one of the things that I love most about our BSET team is that they're so new, but they're so committed to Robertson. And they really embody what it means here at Robertson to be part of a community. Coming back from COVID, our teachers were really adamant about rebuilding our community with students and with staff. So one of the big things that we did this year is we have buddy classrooms. So we paired up our lower grade with an upper grade. We have events throughout the year. In addition to having every other month or so, we have recognition assemblies. And then every other month, we have some buddy assemblies. So the Santa hats probably give it away, but this was a buddy assembly right before winter break. And these are a time where you meet with your buddy class, we do some fun things, and we just come together as a school and just celebrate the community of Robertson. Kids get together, they're having a great time. And so we're just rebuilding after those COVID years of being alone in our house and our computers. We're coming back with masks, and our kids have just loved the buddy classrooms, and they've really gravitated toward each other and sort of being back in community with each other. So with that, I leave you with a couple of pictures of what is so important at Robertson, and that's learning. We have a kindergarten and first grade classroom of just our daily learning that we do. And on behalf of Robertson Elementary, home of the Rockets, we just thanks for the opportunity to share some of our great work. And I'll open it if you have any questions.
Are there any questions or comments from the board?
Thank you, Carrie. This was a very comprehensive presentation in a very short amount of time.
Thank you.
I don't know that I have any specific questions, but I do appreciate the fact that you have taken on the task of rebuilding the community of Robertson. I know that the past couple of years has they have really hit our schools hard.
Yeah.
And I applaud you for taking on that challenge and really making it your own, and making sure that all of the students here and all of the staff are heard and feel like they're a part of the Robertson family. So thank you very much.
Thank you.
Yes, I don't have any questions, but I do have some comments. I just want to say thank you as well for the presentation. And it was music to my ears. And I'll explain why. It's because, I'm more into the systems thinking, systems approach, and that's exactly what we talked about, right? Talked about shared leadership or collaboration, talked about continuous improvement, assessment. I love the values, that everybody's important on campus, right? Teachers, staff, everybody, students especially. Like they talked about outcomes, growth and achievement. The growth part is awesome as well to show. I think that shows kids that they're achieving something, right, and motivates them and gets them going, and just kind of helps them along the way. And I really like that our students.
Yeah.
Just want to thank you for your leadership and the job you've done at the school. I know I've been to a few of the events here in the past. I've seen the staff here, and you have great staff. And I have to say I'm a little biased that you have probably, if not the best counselor, one of the best in the whole district.
We do have an amazing staff and an amazing counselor. We're really fortunate to have her. Yeah. Thank you.
Any other comments or questions?
Just a quick comment and question. Thank you so much for the presentation. I also appreciate the thoroughness. If the school board gave you a magic wand, what would you use that magic wand for to help support your kids?
Oh my goodness. Magic wand. I don't know. The list is long of things for kids. I think this year, seeing the work of our BSET team, and the work of our social emotional, I think there's just a lot more work to do there. Just that community building aspect and making sure we have adequate time for that and just resources for it. Our kids were really hit hard by COVID. And so I think just really keen into that social emotional the last few years more than ever before. So I think just resources around that, just support for teachers, just training on what that looks like, how to help support kids. I think that would probably be the biggest thing is, if we need that social emotional support before we can really get down to the academics, that's more apparent, I think, than ever.
Yeah, no questions. I would just echo Director Rice. That was a lot of great information, and we do really appreciate it. So thank you.
Thank you.
I also greatly appreciate what you presented. I'm really excited about seeing students doing their own monitoring of their own academics and behavior. That's extremely rewarding, and I'm glad that you've implemented that to a high degree. I'm also really pleased, as a former school counselor myself, I'm really pleased to see the efforts in social emotional learning and seeing that that's paying dividends for you. And I have a hunch that's probably a key part of your attendance improvement to the climate that creates for the school. So congratulations on your hard work and to your whole staff. And thank you so much for a good presentation.
Okay, thank you very much.
Next up, we have a report on our asset preservation program coming from Lufboro and Associates, or is Dr. Darling presenting for us?
I'll tee him off. So thank you. So we, on a yearly basis, we do an assessment of our district's assets, specifically our buildings, and we present to the board. So we've asked Gary Wedge, the principal architect of Lufboro Wedge here in Yakima, who many of you know are quite familiar with because Gary's involved in many of our projects, including our current project at Davis. And he was also part of our CFAC committee work this last year. I've asked Gary to come and read the 170-page report to you.
No.
Yeah. So to me, yeah, we practiced it twice already. So under the Asset Preservation Program, a district is required to assess the condition of each APP building according to the building's useful life cycle using the Building Condition Assessment Framework. The information is contained in the OSPI Online Information and Condition of Schools report. And I have included the full report that indicates we completed the assessment of the 2022-23. And Gary is here to answer any questions you may have.
So I do have, just before, if you have any questions, I'll give you. The first thing is just that I am certified, been certified since, I can't remember what the date is on that thing. I think 2013. This actually certification came about after 1994. And what it is any school project that is state assisted or uses OSPI funds is required to then give an update every year and then be certified by a BCA consultant similar to myself or any other firm every 6th year. So that's what we're here today is this is that 6th year to kind of let the board know that actually you guys have been using our firm over the last 3 or 4 years. So when I reviewed this, you guys were right where you needed to be. And I didn't just review just the schools that you're required to actually certify, which is the schools that used state assistance since 1994. I actually reviewed all your schools and I brought them up to where OSPI wants them to be. And if you look at the next pages, I think there is an example right there that says draft on it. And it is what OSPI gave to us when they trained us to say, when you evaluate these schools, we expect these schools after like 5 years of service, 10 years of service, 15 years of service, to be at about this percentage. Now, of course, it's not a reflection on custodial or the school district when it gets down in the lower percentages. I want to convey that. You guys have some of the best custodial staff and maintenance groups than a lot of people. So it is where OSPI wants you to be at these schools, because if you're lower, they're going to say, well, what have you been doing to bring these schools up to the percentage that we want you to be? If you're higher, what happens is if there's any state assistance when the state goes out for money and they don't get as much money for school funding as they anticipated, you go to a priority system. And that has happened twice in my 35 years that we've gone to a priority system. So if you're rated higher than what OSPI is expecting to be at on that draft sample, then you go higher on the list. Other people that are at that rate or lower get first priority. You, because you rate yourself as higher, get to wait in line. So I try to stress that to boards, to maintenance staff and everybody, that it's very important to try to toe the line, because it helps OSPI when they go ask for money for future schools for upgrades. And it also, if we ever go to a priority system, that we do not fall behind others if we are trying to fix up our schools. So long story short, the evaluation I just gave you on the packet I handed out, the summary, the first 2 pages of all your schools, and they are where they need to be as far as percentages for the years they've been in service. And if you want to know how I come up with that percentage, you can review the rest of that I think it's a 69-page document. It kind of shows each of the categories, whether it's footings and foundations, drainage, roof structure, windows, doors, hardware, and you have to rate them from either good, excellent, good, fair, poor, unsatisfactory. Whenever you click that box, it gives you a 90%, 70%, 50%, 30%, and then all those added up is where it comes up with that percentage. So I try to go through each of those categories for each of the school sections and rate them to the best of my ability to make that percentage come out where OSPI expects your buildings to be without having to put in additional further dollars. Short. So you are, again, certified by me. Mark Brown at OSPI has already reviewed this. Says everything's exactly where he wants you guys to be. We just have to present it to the board, bring you up to speed what these percentages are. Following this board presentation, we can click certified and you will be good for the next 6 years. Now, I guess with that diatribe, Is there any questions for me?
I have an initial question, and then maybe follow up for Superintendent Assistant Associate Superintendent Darling. So I see that this framework is focused on the building, and as I thumb through or arrow through a couple of the different sites and the assessments, there isn't anything focused on playground. Was that part of? Has that ever been part of our assessment?
No, but that did come up during the study and survey process, and obviously playgrounds is very important to our students and their activities and exercise and everything. But as far as OSPI, they fund for the buildings, and what they give you for the buildings also has to go into play areas, which is predominantly grass, parking lots, site improvements, safe walking paths, but does not mean that it cannot go towards playgrounds and play equipment. But how we spend our money that OSPI gives us as far as assistance, no, there's no category in there to review the playground equipment, at least from an evaluation standpoint.
Is it anything from the school district level that we do in a regular assessment of the quality of playground and the quality of the equipment?
So that actually just came up last week, and Executive Director Cooper and I are working on partnering with a third-party firm to come and do exactly that, to assess our, just from an equity standpoint, but also from an ADA compliance standpoint.
Okay, thank you
so
so
we're
much.
we're assessing for what do we have, potential liability issues that may exist in the current structures, and what can we do for improvements.
It appears that there may be that are missing from the list, like for instance, Hooper. Just wondering about what Hoover would be ranked in terms of this assessment.
Well, Hoover, I don't think has had any improvement since 1994. So it's probably not one that's required by OSPI to be evaluated. And if I've missed it, I apologize. I will make sure I do get it on the list and evaluate it, even though it's not required. I do want to kind of evaluate every one of your schools. Yeah, again, only the ones that are highlighted in blue by OSPI are the ones that were required. The other ones are not required. So if Hoover's on that list, it's not required to be evaluated, but I have, as part of the study and survey, wanted to go through and evaluate all your buildings so that you had a good percentage, so that if you needed to, you could systematically kind of evaluate them and put them in different groups. Let's take care of these first four first. Next four is going to be the second run, and then lastly would be the following four, or the remainder.
Director Navarro, if you like, we can send you that. It's a separate report that has all the schools. We can send that to you if you like. It's no.
I think it's 69.
Yeah, if you could send that maybe to all of us or post it in board docs or something. I was interested in the four schools that we're currently talking about, as well as some of the older remodeled schools, Ridgeview, Adams, MLK.
I can tell you
those that were in that first flush of rebuilt schools back in the early 90s, late 80s.
Since I sat in and listened as part of the study and the study and survey and part of the pre-bond assistance, meetings. The four that are under consideration were four of the lowest ranking schools and kind of the highest priority for that group.
Well, that's, I guess, to be understood.
Yep.
They are the oldest, and we all know that education has come a long way and needs a lot of stuff now that is not necessarily in those older schools. So.
Correct.
Okay, thank you.
All right, thank you for your time.
Thank you. Okay, next up we have updates from members of the board. Any updates? Yours is coming item later.
I would just, excuse me, just mention that I had an opportunity in one of our one-on-ones with Superintendent Green to do a tour at the Early Learning Center, which I had not been to before. And it was really interesting to see and um, comprehend in, with visual eyes, how many young students are there, and to meet some staff members there and to kind of get a feel for that campus and for how much acreage is actually there behind the old Castleville building, which I had not been aware of. And it was a very interesting experience, and it gives you a whole lot of hope for the whole goal of pre-K preparedness that I think is on everyone's mind. So I was really glad I got to do that, and I would encourage any board member, if you haven't been down there yet with Dr. Green, to take a quick tour, because it was well worth the time.
Thank you. Anybody else? I do have a brief report on the Davis Auditorium. Director Beckett and I and Dr. Green and Dr. Darling and Mr. Murrieta and former board member Walt Renta had the opportunity to tour the progress at the Davis. I notice he's here. I suspect he's signing up for a comment later. So, but anyway, we had the opportunity to tour the Davis Auditorium, and progress is moving along now. They anticipate that if you go in now, the building is full of scaffolding. The scaffolding will come out second week of June, and then they'll start preparing the floor to put in the new seats. And the anticipated, and you know how construction goes, but the anticipated completion date is by August. And hopefully it'll be open for school next year when school begins at Davis, and for the Davis class of 68 55th reunion on September 15th. Hopefully we can take a tour of that. There will be lots of interest in that class. At any rate, that's my report for today. Anybody else? Okay. We have our superintendent's update. I believe Dr. Darling will present those things today.
Just included continuation of reminder for our district's equity policy, and then which is a condition that would be achieved if one's group membership no longer predicted in a statistical sense how one fares. Equity is an outcome, not just access to opportunity. And then the character word of the month was read by one of our students. Just a reminder, is reverence, honor, or respect felt or shown.
And I believe our superintendent's at a training this week. So.
He's at the WASA superintendent retreat, yes.
Right. So calendar updates and future agenda items. We had some discussion last week, but we only had 3 board members present, so we did want to make the commitment on changing the board retreat proposal, moving it from August 7th to August 14th. So hopefully you've had an opportunity to look at your calendars, and that will work for everyone. See a consensus. Yeah. Okay. And then you've received your graduation and celebration dates are on your calendars. And the policy governance and board meeting calendars are attached. There's the WASDA District 8 regional meeting, May 18th, and on here it says at YVC. That's actually at YVTech. Who is planning to go? If we have more than 2, we need to do the quorum. You're going? Okay, I will plan to go. Anybody else? Okay, so we will represent you at the regional meeting. Any other questions or comments? Has everyone looked at the new wedded calendar with all the superintendent and district activities? You had a chance to look at that and see how that works. Okay. In the new Gmail calendar, check with Barb. I had some challenges at first.
You know, it's that old if you do it. And you think it's gonna work.
Yeah, yeah. So she can help with that. And there's also a way to quickly move it in and out of your own calendar. So if you have all those things in your calendar, there's a little, at the beginning you can click and move all the school district stuff off, because I got overwhelmed when I saw the district stuff. I thought, I'm not that busy.
Are we,
Yeah. Please let me or Trevor or Barb know.
Are we looking into doing self-assessment of the retreat?
We're looking at following up with Mary Alice Hushel, and we're also looking at following up with something in the assessment process. I think with, what was the other?
Tricia Lubach. We have another, Tricia. Yeah, we have another training that we have to do.
Have time set aside from WASDA. But it has to do, what she's training us around is some self-assessment. That's the tentative plan, but it's negotiable. One of the challenges that's been, and as you are well aware with our board assessment, is that the WASDA tools for self-assessment don't mesh real well with policy governance. So that's part of what we want to address. Yeah.
That same tool that, sort of the same tool that we use for superintendent's self-evaluation in the Excel sheet.
Mm-hmm.
We've used that for the board policies. So I think I sent you that, but I can send it to you again.
I think so. Yeah, send it again. Yeah. Any other questions or comments? Calendar update. Okay, moving on to our first opportunity for comment from the public. We have someone that wishes to comment on agenda items today. And now we're up for a number of approvals. Start with Dr. Darling. Resolution to amend the superintendent's contract.
Thank you. So I come in place of our Chief Legal Counsel, Bob No. The requested action is that the Board of Directors approve resolution number 06.22.23, amended the superintendent's contract. Part of the component of the contract states, in the event the members of the senior management team provided a state-funded salary increase in accordance with RCW 28A.400.206, the superintendent's salary shall be adjusted similar and be reflected in an addendum, which will be part of this contract. So that is the proposal that we're bringing forward to you.
And I believe Dr. Green has in individual meetings with each of us addressed some of the other minor changes to the contract. Is that clear for everyone? Understand that. It's also included in this document. Okay. So do I hear a motion?
A move to approve that the Board of Directors approves Resolution 06.22.23, amendment to the superintendent's contract.
Second.
Been moved and seconded to approve the amendments to the superintendent contract. Any other questions or discussion? Barb, would you call the roll?
Director Beckett,
Aye.
Director Navarro Jr., Director Rice,
Aye.
Vice President Villanueva,
Aye.
President Walker.
Aye.
Motion passes 5-0.
Next up, Dr. Rodriguez will present us with approval of the contract with Savas for the purchase of grades 6 to 12 perspectives in English and language, essentially our English and language arts curriculum, for the amount of nearly $2 million.
Thank you, Board President Walker. We do have an item before that, if you want me to go over that one first.
Oh, I missed, yeah, my agenda jumped ahead here.
So action item number 2 is for approval to contract with Amplify for the purchase of Core Knowledge Language Arts, also known as CKLA. That's what you're going to hear our teachers say, for grades K through 5. That is for our English Language Arts curriculum beginning next fall, and also Amplify Caminos for grades K5 for our Spanish Language Arts curriculum. The total cost for both programs is $3,195,656.24. And we are using ESSER Learning Recovery Funds. So you've heard monthly from Jake Cooper about those ESSER updates. This is where a lot of those funds are going, is for our adoptions, K-12. This is the elementary adoption. It covers everything necessary, including electronic and consumable materials for the next 7 years. We are now on a 7-year curriculum review and adoption cycle. So that will take care of that expense for several years to come. And I definitely would be remiss if I did not take a moment to just sincerely thank and recognize all of our staff that participated in this process. We had over 1,200 staff hours, and that does not include the TNL department staff. Particularly Erin Chaplin, who is in the audience today, and I want to give kudos to her. She alone had hundreds of hours into this process, along with several other members of our teaching and learning team. We also want to recognize, and they're noted in the packet with asterisks, they were on the subcommittee group as well that helped narrow down the focus. And we're quite excited to bring you this purchase this night. And you can see all the smiling faces in there as well. It was a unanimous decision of the staff committee, which involved about 50 people. So significant lift this year for our teaching and learning team, as well as many of our faculty across our elementary system. And so with that, I'm happy to answer any questions.
Are there any questions for Dr. Rodriguez?
Yes, sorry. I have a question. I know in the past that there was a curriculum committee that would present the curriculum and textbooks, a chance to read textbooks and online materials and so forth. So I would just ask you Martha about that, if that's the process. So I'm just trying to include that. Okay. So just to get a little deeper dive into at least to
Sure. We would be happy to get you additional information. I will say that we did host open meetings for faculty and families, community members, for anyone who wanted to come in and check out all of the materials. We had hard copies of every single item in the materials that happened after the staff. We had several staff days of training where we were going through the materials, and they were available during that time as well. And so happy to answer any other questions.
I wasn't aware. And I don't know if the rest of you receive notification of that. But quite often, the board doesn't receive information that goes out to families or community with those with kids in schools and such, unless you have kids in school. So just so that you know that.
Thank you.
Any other questions or comments for Dr. Rodriguez? Do I hear a motion to approve this expenditure?
I move approval to contract with Amplify to purchase Core Knowledge Language Arts for grades K through 5 English Language Arts curriculum, and Amplify Caminos, is that right? For grades K through 5 Spanish Language Arts curriculum in the amount of $3,195,656.24.
Do I hear a second?
Second.
So moved and seconded to approve the purchase of the Amplify curriculum. Any other questions?
Yes, I'm just not feeling comfortable not being get into a little bit more into the process.
Do we have, is there some calendar pressure to get the funding approved by such and such a date?
We cannot proceed with the purchase until the funding purchase is approved by the board. And so that will delay our ability to have the resources in hand to distribute to staff so that they have time to acclimate over the summer in preparation for next fall. We have actually some training already scheduled for June 16th, the day after school gets out, to just get our teachers into the digital copies and get started on the work.
If I could just make a suggestion, I'm comfortable voting for approval today. But if there's an opportunity for any of us who choose to sit in on any of these trainings, I think that would be really, really helpful. So maybe just the chance to loop in after the fact would help us in community conversations. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other questions? Hey, Barb, would you call the roll, please?
Director Beckett,
Aye.
Director Navarro Jr., Director Rice,
Aye.
Vice President Villanueva,
Aye.
President Walker.
Aye.
Motion passes 4-0 to 1.
Okay, moving on to now the contract with
Number
South
3.
Ox.
Yes, thank you. So very similar information for you. This is our soon to be adopted English language arts curriculum for grades 6 through 12. So our middle schools and high schools. We are looking to contract with Savas for the program, which is called My Perspectives. And the total cost is $1,985,042.40. Again, we are planning to use ESSER Learning Recovery Funds. And again, this purchase provides 7 years of consumables, digital licenses, and textbooks, as well as novel sets and other materials needed to run the program in full. Again, I would like to sincerely thank and recognize our secondary staff, and you have all of their names there, including those that served on the subcommittee to help us narrow down the selection. This group, we were a little speedier, but it was still over 780 staff hours in addition to our teaching and learning department team time. And again, by the end of it, it was a unanimous vote of our faculty to make this selection. So with that, happy to answer any questions about the secondary adoption.
Any questions or comments?
Just reiterating my comment from the first one.
Do I hear a motion?
I move that the Board of Directors grant approval to purchase grades 6 through 12 My Perspectives English Language Arts curriculum from Savas in the amount of $1,985,042.40.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded to approve the contract with Savas. Any other discussion? Barb, would you call the roll, please?
Director Beckett,
Aye.
Director Navarro Jr., Director Rice,
Aye.
Vice President Villanueva,
Aye.
President Walker.
Aye.
Motion passes 4-1.
Okay, Director Rice. Now we're up with approval of the 2024 legislative proposal.
As I've shared with you in a couple of previous meetings, we are currently in the window for submitting proposals to WASDA for the 2023 General Assembly to form the platform for the 2024 legislative session. I hope that you had an opportunity to review the catalog of proposals that we looked at last year at General Assembly. And one of those that I would like to suggest we consider submitting from Yakima would be equity-based pre-K to 12 education funding model. You have the language there. Essentially, what this would do is a proposal to replace the prototypical school funding model with one that is equity-based and covers pre-K to 12. We know that the prototypical school funding model is not equitable because the base presumption on it is that every school is the same, and and every child in every school is the same, so every child gets X amount of dollars or cents for particular positions or programs out of the general ed funding. So I don't know how many of you remember when the prototypical school funding model came to be, but in that model, if you want to have a school psychologist for your middle school students, you have to have 200 and some thousand middle school students to pay for one school psychologist. I'm not sure that there's that many middle school kids in the whole state. If you don't get that funding from the state, it has to come out of basic ed money. So this proposal says establish a model that is based on student need. So if you have a low-income school with a high degree of socioeconomic learning challenges, or if you have a school with a lot of English language learning students, adjust that funding accordingly. And so you see the rationale down there, and I would submit this for your consideration.
I believe last year we submitted 3 proposals. Do we just want to submit one in this window this time?
Well, if you want me to submit proposals for anything,
No, I'm not.
just
asking.
tell me that.
Oh, okay.
But we have to approve at least the title and concept today, because the window closes on the 12th, and we don't have another meeting before the 12th.
Right.
I'm happy to. Last year, I think we did something on school meals. We did something on
Ed and something on transportation.
So as far as the proposal here with WASDA initiating and or supporting the legislation, because my question is always, if we're going to change something, who's deciding what's being changed and how is it being done? Are we talking about WASDA's Government Affairs Committee working with a select group of legislators writing something and we don't know what that looks like yet? Or is there something in structure already out there that we can say this is what is being proposed so that we can see that? Because I remember the assembly, which is the fire hose of all the different proposals, but I never saw anything specific outside of the prototypical model other than talking about changing it. So does that exist yet, or is this still just in concept?
This is in concept. I do know that there is at least one legislator this is on her radar, and she is very interested in working with a school district or education association or somebody to craft the language for a bill to drop. I think it was pretty evident in the discussion this year in the legislature that prototypical school model needs a lot of work at a minimum. And she's very interested in working with somebody on this. I don't believe that she's gotten a bill written yet. Typically, they like to work with people who have common interests and develop that language. Those proposals that come to General Assembly are essentially conceptual.
And those tend to be district presented or driven, correct?
This year, they have to be district approved before the legislative committee can consider them. In the past, that's not been the case. In the past, an individual board member can submit them, or one of the committees of WASDA can submit some. At one point, even people not affiliated with WASDA could submit them, but that they stopped that. So this year, the only submittal bodies are individual school boards or the legislative committee to fill in the holes that might happen.
I guess my final question, if I may, is just there's a school of thought that says when we get into something like this where we're changing the prototypical funding model, that we're essentially getting away from the idea that there's an amount of money that follows a child in a building in a district. And as parents have chosen to use other sources of education as opposed to public schooling around the state, and enrollment numbers have dropped, the perception is that we're trying to change the rules for how the money flows so that we don't lose money based on enrollment. Is that a fair assessment in your opinion or not?
I don't know that I don't think that it is. This is based on student need, and even the prototypical school model isn't based on student need. It was an attempt back in the late 90s, early 2000s, to address the inadequacies of the model that was the basic ed formula. There were a lot of students that their needs weren't being met, including special ed students. Their needs weren't being met under that old model. And so there were lawsuits and such that helped correct some of that, but taking things through the court system isn't always the best way to come out with a good solid model that will meet the needs of all. So right now, all students' needs are not being met simply because of the things like the example that I gave you for a school psychologist. That's not the only one on the list that is highly underspent or under allocated. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I appreciate your perspective on it. I'm not, I have a different perspective. I think the premise, that there's this wild understanding of everything being off kilter is, it's led and it's followed both directions politically, and, listening to the assembly, you could tell there was a very interesting disagreement about a lot of things that were being discussed when it came to school financing.
There's only 1,477 different opinions.
There's only type A personalities on that call, right? Yeah. But this is one of those things that, in the short time I've been on the board, obviously school finance is so complex and so overwhelming to begin with. And I am personally not in with the majority opinion in WASDA. So I wouldn't be interested in voting for something without knowing a lot more about what we're moving towards. That's where I'm coming from. So I wouldn't support this today.
Well, again, this, if you were to sum this up, this is not designing the model. It's just making essentially a statement that a future funding model should be equity based.
Yeah,
And
it's a
that's-
concept.
It's a concept. It's not in the weeds with the design of the model. But it's just stating that that's a value. I don't have problem supporting this concept. It's the board decision if we want to support this statement or not.
And
Anybody else?
yeah,
want to speak or
I do.
comment?
For some reason, I get confused with the terminology and how we define equity in this a proposal, because now we're saying that equity is based on needs. And I thought that our last definition was about systemic racism and systemic or racist policies and procedures and so forth. So this is saying that based on student needs, so which is our first definition of equity, right? So it seems like we're going back to that definition that we had like 2-3 years ago, maybe 4 years ago. So I just get confused with how we use the word equity and what that really means in this document. So again, I just wanted to make mention of that. I'm just not sure what that really means.
Well, again, if we go back to the Yakima district definition of equity, it is the condition that would be achieved if one's group membership no longer predicted in a statistical sense how one fares. Equity is the outcome, not just access to opportunity. So if we were to equate that to this, that's saying that a funding model should be built on the idea that one's support in the education system is not based on one's membership, but is based on having an equitable outcome as being a member of that district. So that, I don't see a conflict in terms of the definition, our district definition of equity, which is not that different than many districts and the state's WASDA's definition of equity. I think what it's saying is a funding model needs to address some of those things that makes a system equitable for all kids. That's all it's saying to me. I can't parse it any differently than that.
It's about what students need, not who students are.
Yeah.
And not where they come from, not what their zip code is.
Yeah. And I think some of the challenges, and we don't see it the same in our district, as you sit and talk with people in some of the little tiny rural districts and the challenges they have in terms of providing equitable education, or, you know, and the funding they have, and the funding models in the state now are based on, a lot of the funding models are based on property taxes. And so, like, if you take a Mercer Island,
Mount Adams,
or a Mount Adams, in Mercer Island, you can have an extremely low levy, can raise a heck of a lot of money because of the property values. But if you take the property values of Hera and try to build an education system around the property values in Hera, you can't do it. That's not equitable. And so there's something needs to happen in our funding system that evens the playing field. That's when you're talking about funding equity, is that, or districts that are in a very low, in an area where the real estate values are extremely low. And as a real estate person, you probably understand that. You cannot just raise taxes to provide an equitable school system, or you've got people with less means paying much taxes than people that are come from Bellevue or Issaquah or any of those property rich type of districts. So I think that's where the challenge in being equitable comes from. That's an oversimplification.
I would reiterate, though, that, and you're not wrong, but I reiterate what I said earlier, you know, the McCleary decision was supposed to fix a lot of this, and everyone went along with it through the court system, you know, hoping for the best. But again, we didn't know what we were going to in the end, and it didn't fix much. And so we're now talking about doing the same thing from a legislative perspective of addressing what some would say is a better approach. And yet we're being asked to support something that we haven't seen yet or don't understand. And I'm just not
Well,
there.
it's a concept.
Yeah.
It's not.
And I think there's a big misconception that the concept is agreed upon statewide, and it isn't. It's a political structure, and there are people within WASDA, within the state, who aren't all on the same page.
Mhm.
And so until I see some really specific information that shows me what, you know, where the gaps are, what the need is, and how this will address those, I'm not capable of jumping on board with it.
And Martha, wasn't there a proposal or a alleged position of WASDA that talked about what Norm talked about? I think it had to do more with the levies, and
Oh, yeah,
so is that similar or is that a different? Because
well, the discussion about levies and bonds are potentially separate from this, but they could be all wrapped up in this too.
Mhm.
If the legislature really wanted to have an equitable funding model,
Okay.
they would provide districts the necessary funds so that they wouldn't have to run levies.
Yeah, so that's what I was wanting to clarify, because Norma, I think you were alluding to the bonds and levies in that position. So I'm just trying to.
There were only like 120 positions last year.
Yeah, there were. So, but I'm just trying to connect what he was saying with what you're proposing, or
Yeah.
this proposal here, and to see if it's to determine whether or not it's included or if it's a separate issue.
Yeah, this would form the base for, and I mean, there's no guarantee that even if a bill is written and dropped, that it will actually make it through the entire process and come out the end with something that we recognize. There were over 2,000 bills dropped this year, and this was a very productive year for the legislature. They approved 400 and some of them, but they didn't approve the other 1,500. So, you know, things drop into the legislative churn machine, and sometimes they come out the other end and sometimes they don't. And sometimes they come out looking like something completely different than they did going in. And that's why the public and agencies and school districts and school directors and everybody has a voice. They can go to the legislature and say, you know, we like this except for whatever, or we think this is the greatest thing since sliced bread, and you should overwhelmingly approve it. Or we don't like this at all. It's not at all what we intended when we wrote that conceptual platform item. So, I mean, there's no guarantee in life, but you don't make any progress unless you step up and come up with a suggestion for how it might be better.
My understanding of this proposal is not that it's a funding model in and of itself. This is a value statement.
Mm-hmm.
And it's a value statement that says that whatever funding model the legislature comes up with, if the position of WASDA is that it needs to be equity-based. So that's all this is. It's a value statement, not a design of the model.
All funding models are value statements.
Yeah.
You
But I
know,
mean, but
you
this is-
budget for what you
Right.
you budget for what you think is important
Right.
in the process.
So I don't have a problem with this because it says that should be based on equitable thinking.
Okay, I would make
Do I hear a motion?
I would make a motion that we approve the legislative proposal for an equity-based PK-12 education funding model.
We'll hear a second.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded to approve an equity-based funding model proposal. Or this is for the WASDA legislative position. Okay. So, any other discussion or question or comment?
So I have a question. How would an individual school board member get involved in writing the bill if it came to that? So you said there was a legislator that was interested in this. So once if it goes to WASDA and there's a WASDA approval process, right? And then
For the platform, the conceptual issue.
Right. And then how does it, like, what's next?
Well, I have the name of that legislator. And even if for some reason the WASDA body at General Assembly says, no, we don't think that this should be a priority, or we're not going to approve this, you could still work with that legislator and work on that language.
And if the WASDA body did approve it, is that we just kind of hope that someone's going to pick a legislator would pick it up and do something with it, and then it gets written at that point?
Well, we know that, I know that this legislator is interested in this topic and wants to write a bill for next legislative session. This is a big ticket item. And so in all likelihood, it's going to take a few years. It's not something that they're going to approve next year. But if the WASDA body approves this, then it makes it onto the platform. How they rank it in the prioritization process will determine how high up in the platform it ends. If this is ranked fairly high, then it's likely that WASDA will either work with that legislator or put out a call for any individual board members who would be interested in working on this with the legislator, and kind of pair those folks up. So
another way to sum that up would be what we're voting for today is, do we want this concept to be part of the WASDA legislative platform? We're not.
Do we want it to be part of the discussion?
Yeah, or the WASDA. Yeah.
At General Assembly.
So that's what we're
because
voting on.
the outcome of that discussion determines the platform.
Right.
So I just want to say I want to make this clear. I do support and I believe in equity in education. That's important, and we all know the history of education in the United States and how that's been an issue. However, I just can't at this time won't be able to support this because of the thoughts or the comments I made in the past about the shotgun approach, right? That we contribute everything, all the disparities to the inequities in the system, right? That it's based on structural racism, institutional racism, racist policies. I have to go back to those. And so when I say shotgun approach is, I'm understanding that we're assuming that the equities are all due to what I just mentioned, the structural racism and so forth. And I've opposed that idea, that notion that it's all due to racism or structural racism. There's other variables that are involved in terms of the inequities that are this disproportionality that we see in test scores and all of the graduation rates and so forth. But as we've seen in our data from last year, Students of color are outperforming the white student group in several areas. So, you know, I think the disparities are already, at least in the Yakima School District, are already changing. So, and then the other thing is, as we heard today in our presentation, every student is valuable. The focus is on every student and their particular needs. I didn't hear anything about equity and racism and so forth. It's just for me, what I understood is just that's what happens in education. We focus on every student and every student's needs, and we help them to accomplish the goals in which are to whatever they are in education right at each grade level. So I just wanted to mention that.
Any other comments or questions? Okay, it's been moved and seconded. Barb, would you call the roll, please?
Director Beckett,
No.
Director Navarro Jr.,
No.
Director Rice,
Aye.
Vice President Villanueva,
Aye.
President Walker.
Aye.
Motion passes 3-2.
Okay, we have now arrived at our second opportunity for public comment.
We do have one.
And so I'm assuming you've read the directions. We don't have to go through the direction. Telling the floor. So you're welcome to your 3 minutes, Walt. For those of you that don't know, Walt Renda is a former Yakima District Board member.
Except
and
I'm,
a history instructor.
well, there you go. I'm a former history teacher, and you expect me to hold a 3? The reason I'm here is because the Davis Auditorium. First, it's two-parter. First, I wrote a letter to the board and everyone about my concerns about the Davis Auditorium, where it was, progress, and so on. And it included a statement that it was my understanding. Now, first of all, those of you that know me, retired teacher, but I also know a lot of people outside of education and other industries. And in talking with people, there was the comment, well, it's supposed to be done in April, but it'll be done in July, which really means it's supposed to be done in July and it'll be done in December. And so that's why I included that statement, which kind of fired a few people up, I guess. But what it boiled down to is the lack of understanding of why there was the delay. And I really want to thank, let's see, Dr. Darling was there, Mr. Beckett, Board Member Beckett, Board Member Walker, School Board Member or School Superintendent Green invited me to join them because I had written that letter, I'm assuming, and it showed an interest. And I appreciated that because I was able to find out why there was the delay. And it was, to me, kind of obvious once I heard it, and that is this building was built in the 1930s, and a lot of things had been done since then, and it wasn't in the knowledge of people that were getting ready to go to work. The designs or whatever were completely different. So that's what caused the delay. Now, part of my concern was my grandson. I always say he played John Travolta when they did Grease at Davis this year. He was Danny Zuko, and had hoped to be able to be on the stage for one last time his senior year. Going to 8 performances, I heard a lot of people asking when they looked out through the door there by the office about the fencing. Oh, when's that auditorium? Why isn't that auditorium done? I would like to suggest, 1, thank you for letting me go so I could hear where we were. But 2, there are a lot of people that don't know why. Why is it taking longer than had anticipated? And even if you went so far as to have our local television station, show a little the inside and have them explain, hey, this is building, it's what, 90 years old, something like that. There's a lot of things that they ran into that were not anticipated. And that would help maybe ease a little of the concern by people the angst about why isn't the Davis Auditorium done. I was on the board when we decided to postpone, and we got ripped big time. The 3 that are on the board remember those days of how much we got chewed on about putting it off. But we wanted it done right. And that's the intent right now. From what we saw, President Walker is, what year did you graduate again?
68.
68. Okay, yeah. My wife graduated in 69. They were in musicals together. They want that done right. And so maybe notifying the community as to why of the delays would really help ease a little bit. And then the fact that we were told that June 26th, I think, is when he plans on start putting the chairs down. And that's the last stage, the last step of the auditorium. So I'm a history teacher. Okay, anyway, thank you very much for allowing me to speak. Thank you for allowing me to go on the tour and finding these out. But that's my recommendation, is you let the city know what was the reason for the delay. So thank you.
Thank you all. We have a few policy governance items. We have a few policy governance items. We'll lead off with Dr. Darling on policy 1002.0, global executive constraints.
Thank you. So this policy statement is: the superintendent will not cause or allow any practice, activity, decision, or organizational circumstance which is either unlawful, imprudent, or in violation of commonly accepted business and professional ethics or practices. Further, the superintendent will abide by all negotiated agreements or rectify any violations as expeditiously as possible. Imprudent means without thought, with the consequence of lacking in judgment or caution. And this was a joint effort by our Chief Legal Counsel, our Human Resources Department, and our Student Services determined that they're in compliance.
Questions? Now, these will go out on a survey month that will be due.
They'll be due Monday, May 8th.
Okay, thank you. Next up, 1000.2.1, treatment of students and their parents, guardians, summarized by Stacy Law.
Thank you, President Walker and distinguished Board of Directors. Had to get that in one last time. Treatment of students and their parents, 1000.2.1. With respect to interactions with students and their parents, guardians, or those applying to be students, the superintendent will not cause or allow conditions, procedures, or decisions which are unsafe, untimely, undignified, unlawful, or unnecessarily intrusive. Superintendent Green is in compliance with all 5 of the following bullets.
Questions? Again, Dr. Darling will fill us in on the working environment of staff. Policy 1000.2.2.
Thank you. With respect to the treatment of paid and volunteer staff, the superintendent will not cause or allow a working environment which is unsafe, unhealthy, undignified, unlawful, inequitable, biased, or contrary to professional or industry standards. Further, the superintendent will abide by all negotiated agreements and is found to be in compliance.
Okay, moving on. Mr. Cooper, 1000.2.3, financial condition and activities.
Good afternoon, everybody. So before you are 2 executive limitations. One is actual financial conditions, and the other one is the budgeting policy. I have reviewed and updated all of the interpretations with Superintendent Green. The financial information has been updated with current financial data. The superintendent and subordinate staff, being me, we are in compliance with all your current remunerated limitations, and I would recommend. I can't recommend, sorry. Old habits die hard. I would recommend adoption, but we're not doing that right at the moment. But again, if you have any questions, you've had the documents in advance. But again, I am fortunate in the financial side to be able to have consistent and updated information. It's a little more difficult sometimes from education colleagues when they have to go gather data. So in that way, and we'll also have a budgeting exercise here shortly as we begin our budgeting season in full. So if there are any questions, I would be happy to entertain them.
Thank you, sir. Thank you. Thank you all for succinct, thorough reports. Is there a need for executive session? Not that I'm aware
Not that I'm aware of.
Okay. So, unless there is any other business concern, thank you all. It's nice to have a full complement of the board and the meeting. See all your faces live, almost alive. With that, we'll adjourn.